This is a 190 Q&A practice test. Plaintiff attorney, Mr. Kim, capital K-I-M. Defense attorney, Mr. Dodge, capital D-O-D-G-E. And we'll start with defense attorney. Ready? Here we go. About every hour or so, depending on circumstances, yes, he gets some sort of a reward at a break time. Yes, water, and by reward I don't really mean a dog bone or something, but a scratch on the ear, some sort of sign that he's appreciated. Yes. And that would include water then for Skip. Yes, now I'm going to use a sort of a fancier word than Mr. Kim did, but you just straighten me out if you don't understand me, because I sort of suspect you will. In handling canines or trained dogs, one of the things you are interested in is false positives. True, yes, a false positive here would mean an alert that the dog gives when in fact there is no source on which the dog would have been trained to alert. That would be a false positive. Okay, you are also interested in false negatives. True, yes, a false negative would be when, for example, as a matter of a training exercise, or someone knows, because usually this would be done blind to you, right? Yes, but someone who has set up the training exercise knows that there is a scent source on which the dog has been trained, right? Yes, if the dog covers the area in which the scent source is hidden but fails to give an indication or alert, that would be considered a false negative. Yes, in other words, the dog missed it. Yes, and that was a mistake because we know it's there, right? All right, what is or now doesn't matter so much, but as of March 5, 2005, what was Skip's rate of false negatives? Objection, Your Honor, overruled. You may answer. His rate of false negative would be very low. I would have to refer to a lot of logs because it's about 6,000 hours of training. He very rarely has missed a source. I can't say never, but very rarely. And indeed, the false negative rate is not something you have ever calculated for Skip. No. What was his rate of false positives in March 2005? False positives are when you are training a cadaver dog, the bigger concern, because the dog is trying to please a handler. Yes, but Skip worked through that about 5 years earlier. His rate of false positive has also been very low as his training progressed with his age. So up until about 5 years before this, let's say 2000 roughly, Skip had a noticeable and unacceptable rate of false positives. Not unacceptable when you shape a behavior with an animal, any animal, you are always building toward that perfect behavior. And so with a dog that is very intense in what they are doing, a false negative, a false positive, would be initially an attempt to please a handler, and that's what you train for. And until that reaches an acceptable level, you normally can't pass an evaluation. That's the reason why we pass certification testing, is when we feel that the dog is at a level that is reasonable. And Skip did that a long time ago at his age, about 5 years ago. He has actually passed that for 8 years, 7 years at the time of the case, all right, but you have not calculated a false positive rate for him either. No. So as you sit here today, you don't know what the false positive rate is, other than your sense is that it's very low, right? To be really fair, it's very hard with task dogs like this to know what's a false positive out in the field. That's true, because sometimes you may not always find the scent source that the dog correctly is finding. That's true. So the falseness, so to speak, may be the human inability to find a scent source that the dog does smell, right? Okay, now in that regard, these dogs have an enormous sensitive capacity for smell. Yes, this is called the olfactory sense, right? Yes, people like you who for 18 years have been training dogs like this have no idea how it is that this olfactory smell or sense of the dog gets so well developed. That's true. What you know is that it is right. Yes. So if you're working a human remains dog, in specific in this part of the world, let's say Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, you sometimes have to go back and try to learn, if you can, are there Native American Indian burial grounds in the area, for example? Yes, because the dog may pick up on human remains that are 1,000, maybe 2,000 years old. True, that would be possible. You have to be aware of, maybe from the local historical society, Was there a 19th century cemetery or family burial plot in the area that I'm working because the dog may be picking up those remains? Yes, you have to be aware of the locations of mortuaries and, for example, whether you are downstream as a matter of the water table from the septic system of a mortuary or crematorium. Yes, but all that said, what the dog really is smelling is decomposing human remains, right? Yes, human remains meaning human tissue, skin, bone, muscle, ligament, that sort of thing. We train on that, and blood, bone, and yes, very good, and that's just where I was going. So we have human tissue and also human bodily fluids, right? Yes, a dog will hit on decomposing blood, or should if properly trained, right? Yes, other human bodily fluids a dog will hit on, maybe, yes, right? And so what happens is the minute tissue comes off us for whatever reason or lands on the ground, a process of decomposition begins, right? Yes, this is just a biochemical process. Yes, there are bacteria in the human body at all times, and then other bacteria on the ground or grass or in the air that will begin to break down human tissue. You are sort of speaking, though, of life scent coming off a live person. A human remain detection dog needs a source of either blood or teeth or hair to give off that scent, right? What's coming off you is live scent. I understand that. That's why I'm saying the minute human tissue hits the ground or is no longer connected to me for whatever reason, that's what I'm talking about, okay? Okay. Are you with me? I'm not talking about, well, my tissue is on me or in me, okay, right? But let's say now that I have cut myself, okay, badly enough to be dripping blood all over after I faint, and you folks have to revive me. We can worry about the dog, but let's say I'm doing that, and at that point the blood drips on the floor are going to begin to decompose, yes, and we don't think of that then, but that's biochemically what's going on at that point, right? Yes, and if it were a good day or a normal day, the typical day for Skip, if you brought him into this courtroom a day or two or a week or a year after I had blood all over the carpet, and if no one had, been successful in cleaning the carpet as to remove all scent of my decomposing blood, you would expect an alert. Yes, I would. In training these dogs, it is not uncommon for you to use, I guess, what politely could be called medical waste. We obtain it from a coroner, but I think that's what you are asking me. Yeah, that is actual human remains, yes, although not always an entire cadaver, no, or corpse, no, other than a sort of special farm in Tennessee under the control of the University of Tennessee. There really isn't a training or proving ground in this country where an entire corpse or cadaver would be used for the purpose of training dogs. That is true. There are three ways to train the human remains dogs that you have described for us here. One would be to use something like a pig carcass. We do not do that, right? And most responsible human remains dog trainers no longer use a pig carcass or parts of a pig, right, in training, yes, because although pigs are very similar to humans in some ways, the fact is that there will be, or a dog may be able to detect differences in decomposing pork or pig carcass as opposed to decomposing human remains. That's right. Another, if we go up the scale then in reliability, another way to train or test or prove these dogs is to use something called pseudocorpse. True? That's true. That's a chemical compound that's produced commercially and available for sale. We do not use that, but I'm aware of the product, and the trend in your business is moving away from using a chemical product. Yes. All right. A short word list. Skip, capital S-K-I-P. American Indian, capital A-M-E-R-I-C-A-N. New word, capital I-N-D-I-A-N. And that is it for the word list. And that will conclude our 190 Q&A practice test.